President Trump said a large armada of U.S. warships heads toward Iran, quote, just in case.
There is no de-escalation in sight, and just a while back we're learning that a U.S. base in Bahrain was hit by a missile attack.
The upcoming days will be decisive. Iran knows that.
4:07 local, Strait of Hormuz. T-minus 90 seconds until impact. 28 Al-Qadr missiles. Nearly 5,000 sailors and aviators in the crosshairs. Every second counts. This is the story of 42 minutes that turned one of the world's most important choke points into a killing ground, and the 10-minute American revenge that followed. Dawn over the Strait of Hormuz is usually deceptive. The sea looks flat. The tanker lanes look orderly. The sky is pale gold over Iran to the north and Oman to the south. But this narrow strip of water, barely about 21 miles across at its tightest point, carries the pressure of the global economy on its back. Oil tankers move through it. Surveillance aircraft circle above it. Warships shadow each other in silence. And this morning, at the center of that tension, is USS Abraham Lincoln, a real Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, flagship of a strike group built around steel, radar, and routine. Picture the scene. Abraham Lincoln is pushing through dark blue water with guided missile escorts spread in a defensive screen. Carrier Air Wing 9 is embarked with real-world aircraft, F-35C Lightning IIs, F/A-18E/F Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, E-2D Hawkeyes, MH-60 helicopters. On the flight deck, yellow shirts wave aircraft into position. Down below, sailors stare at radar repeats and power management panels. In the ready rooms, pilots review patrol patterns. In the Combat Information Center, coffee is still hot. Imagine you're there. Diesel haze from passing commercial traffic mixes with salt spray. The ship feels invincible. It never does right before history tests it. The geopolitical backdrop is real too, U.S. But Fifth Fleet watches this region from Bahrain. American aircraft operate from major Gulf bases like Al-Udeid and Al-Dhafra. Iran's southern coast is lined with radar sites, missile units, fast attack craft bases, and islands that turn the northern side of the strait into a fortress of sensors and launch points. Everyone knows the map. Everyone knows the doctrines. Everyone knows the red lines. What no one knows, not yet, is that in this fictional scenario, Iran's leadership has chosen to cross one. The plan begins far from the waterline, inside hardened command spaces near Bandar Abbas and deeper inland launch zones. Tehran's calculation is brutally simple. Hit the carrier hard enough, fast enough, and Washington pauses. Cripple the flight deck. Kill enough sailors. Force the world to watch the most powerful navy on Earth bleed in a confined sea lane. The chosen weapon is the Al-Qadr family, a real Iranian medium-range ballistic missile line with a range around 1,600 kilometers in open-source assessments and a warhead class around 750 kilograms. In this fictional scenario, those missiles have been adapted for a maritime strike package using coastal radar queuing, drone relays, and terminal targeting updates. From the Iranian perspective, it looks like a predator's dream. The strait is narrow. The carrier's route is predictable. Commercial shipping clutters the battle space. Ballistic missiles come in fast, steep, and hard to stop if they're fired in numbers. Add decoys. Add electronic confusion. Add simultaneous drone launches from islands and coastal pads to overload tracking networks. If even 2 or 3 warheads get through, the political shock alone could dwarf the military effect. That is the bet. Not total destruction, strategic humiliation. And for a moment, the men giving the order believe they've found the weak point. They believe saturation beats sophistication. They believe mass beats integration. They believe the American carrier is the prey. But there's a problem with their plan. What they didn't account for is that a U.S. carrier strike group is not one ship. It is a floating combat network linked to satellites, regional command centers, airborne radar, escort destroyers, electronic warfare aircraft, and standing self-defense authorities that do not wait for speeches. The second flaw is even worse. Every launch tells a story. Hot exhaust plumes, radar spikes, telemetry, drone activations, data link bursts, mobile transporter positions, command relays. The opening shot is also a confession. The first missiles may hurt the target. They also expose the hunter. 4:07:13. Infrared satellites detect the launches. Not guesses, not rumors. Launches. The alert flashes through warning architecture in seconds. Bahrain sees it. Regional air defense nodes see it. The strike group sees it. On Abraham Lincoln, the atmosphere changes before most of the crew understands why. Alarms tear through passageways. General quarters, missile inbound. On escorting Aegis ships, SPY radars swing into full engagement mode. Tracks bloom, numbers climb. Predicted impact corridors update with every sweep. In the E-2D Hawkeye overhead, controllers start speaking faster, sharper, calmer. That's what training sounds like when death is real. Now you're in that Combat Information Center. Red symbols stack on the screen. 28 ballistic tracks, secondary clutter, possible drones, possible cruise profiles from the coast. The tactical action officer does not have the luxury of disbelief. He has seconds to decide which threats are real, which are decoys, which are aimed at the carrier, and which are intended to pull interceptors away from the true attack axis. Could you make that call with 5,000 lives riding on your cursor? 4:08. First interceptors fire. From the outer defensive ring, the strike group's Aegis destroyers punch standard missiles from Mark 41 vertical launch cells. Hatches snap open. Fire erupts. SM-3s leap skyward toward the highest, earliest tracks, trying to kill in the thinning edge of the atmosphere before the geometry collapses into terminal chaos. But seconds later, SM-6S follow on different vectors, built for the ugly part of the problem. Fast-moving air threats, changing trajectories, over-the-horizon battle space, targets that don't behave politely. On the radios, there is no shouting. Just compressed violence in professional language. Track assigned. Shooter ready. Engage. Splash one. Continue. The first wave of kills comes high. White flashes punch holes in the dawn, tiny from the deck, decisive in reality. One Al-Qadr track vanishes, then another, then 4 more. 6 down. But the rest keep falling, and now the geometry gets worse. Some re-entry vehicles break apart into debris and decoy clutter. Some alter slightly in terminal descent. Electronic warfare aircraft light up the spectrum. EA-18G Growlers jam the maritime targeting links feeding the attack package. IEF-35Cs already airborne extend the sensor picture, not as cinematic dogfighters, but as nodes in a kill web, passing track quality data where it matters most. This is not a duel. This is system integration under a stopwatch. 4:09. The sky turns violent. SM-6S reach the next layer. 3 more ballistic threats break apart in bright fragments. One warhead tumbles into the sea miles short. Another erupts so high the sound arrives late. A flat crack rolled across the water. But saturation is doing what saturation is designed to do. More tracks appear. Some are false, some are not. The escorts have to shoot, reassess, shoot again. Their vertical launch cells are a currency, and every decision spends 1. Meanwhile, lower and slower contacts begin to show from the Iranian coast. Drones and probable cruise decoys, not deadly by themselves, harsh but deadly in what they force defenders to look at. This is where battle turns from theory into pulse rate. Less time than it takes to read a text message, less time than your coffee cools. Sailors sprint through steel corridors. Firefighting teams stage in flash hoods and gloves before there's even fire. Flight deck crews dive for cover near chained aircraft. In the island, officers brace against consoles as the ship turns harder, trying to change the final math by even a few hundred yards. Every inch matters now. 4:09:41. The mid-ring engages. Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles and point defense systems start taking the lower clutter out of the air. A drone disappears in a puff of black fragments. Another skips into the water trailing flame. Nulka decoys launch off escorts. In trying to seduce seekers away from the most valuable hulls in the formation, phalanx mounts swivel, their radars locking, 6-barrel guns ready to spit walls of tungsten if anything breaks through. The carrier itself joins the fight with its own close-in defenses. The illusion of a single giant ship is gone. This is a porcupine of steel firing in layers. And still, 3 Al-Qadr warheads survive. 3. That's all. That's enough. The first one comes in from high starboard, descending almost vertically after the last track. Refinement survives jamming. An escort destroyer takes the shot with an SM-6 and misses by a heartbeat. The warhead punches through the edge of Abraham Lincoln's forward flight deck and detonates below the surface of the steel. The explosion rips upward. Aircraft chained for launch bounce like toys. A parked fighter cartwheels into flame. Deck crew disappear in orange-white fire and black smoke. The carrier doesn't break apart. Nimitz-class carriers are monsters. But the front of the flight deck becomes an industrial wound. 4 seconds later, the second impact hits near the island. Antennas shear away. Windows implode. Shrapnel scythes across exposed positions. Internal passageways lose lighting. Communications blink. reroute, fight to survive. Fuel lines rupture. Secondary fires bloom below the deck edge. You're there now, hearing metal scream through your boots, breathing jet fuel and burning insulation, trying to understand whether the deck is still there under the smoke. The third warhead does not score a clean hit. It detonates in the water close off the port quarter after one final defensive burst disturbs its aim. But a near miss from a ballistic missile is not mercy. The shock wave slams the hull. Compartments flood. Men are thrown against bulkheads. A helicopter on the aft section tears loose from its restraints. On the bridge, every report arrives at once. Fires forward. Casualties topside. Island damage. Air ops degraded. Medical teams overwhelmed. Heart pounding. This is real for everyone on that ship now. Iranian command celebrates too soon. They see the plume. They see the smoke column over the strait. They hear the first battle damage summaries from drone operators and coastal radar posts. Carrier hit. Mission success. Strategic shock achieved. In their minds, the Predator has finished the stalk. What they don't yet see is American damage control. A U.S. carrier's first counterattack is often not a missile. It is discipline. Repair lockers seal ruptured spaces. Fire parties advance into infernos with hoses and foam. Medical teams turn hangar bays into triage stations. Crewmen drag the wounded through smoke thick enough to erase the far wall. Officers reroute command circuits around shattered systems. Pilots with aircraft already airborne are ordered away from the kill box, then immediately handed new tasking. The ship is hurt, badly, but it is not dead. That distinction is about to become fatal for the other side. 4:16, 9 minutes after launch detection, 6 minutes after impact. Authorization is no longer a dramatic debate. Understanding self-defense authorities and pre-planned response matrices, the question is not whether the United States will strike back. The question is how wide the retaliation box opens. In Bahrain, we're in the Combined Air Operations Center and across secure links with naval commanders, the answer comes fast. Launch sites, radar nodes, command relays, drone control stations, coastal anti-ship batteries, missile depots, bases to production, sensors to shooters, not rage, not theater, systematic hunting. This is the 10-minute revenge. 4:17. The escorts answer first. Across the strike group, vertical launch cells open again, but now the missiles are not climbing to defend. They are leaving to kill. Tomahawks peel into the morning in successive bursts, low and cold and relentless, curving toward the Iranian coast. One destroyer fires, then another, then the cruiser. The sea around the carrier becomes a launch field of its own, exhaust smoke flattening under the wind as dozens of land attack cruise missiles turn north. Their targets were not chosen after the impacts. They were already loaded in contingency plans because professionals assume the worst before the worst arrives. At the same time, airborne sensors complete the kill chain. F-35Cs and E-2Ds crews pass fresh coordinates on mobile launchers that exposed themselves only minutes earlier. EA-18Gs begin suppressing what remains of the coastal radar picture. MH-60 helicopters push out for rescue and surface surveillance. Surviving escorts tighten around Abraham Lincoln, transforming from bodyguards into execution partners. From the enemy's view, the sea they thought they controlled suddenly grows claws. Then the regional air power joins. From real Gulf bases, aircraft already on alert or airborne reroute toward the Iranian littoral. Tankers shift tracks. AWACS expands coverage. Non-additional fighters are tasked to sanitize airspace and hunt emitters. Not a chaotic rush, a layered response built on repetition, rehearsal, doctrine. If you were in the Iranian command bunker at this moment, you would understand the trap. The missiles that struck the carrier did not create hesitation. They triggered convergence. Everything the United States had in theater is now turning in the same direction. 4:21. The first Tomahawks arrive. Coastal radar on Keshem Island goes dark in a flash and a spray of concrete. A communications hub near Bandar Abbas folds inward as its roof lifts and then disappears. A transporter erector launcher attempting to reposition off a cut road is caught broadside, the missile impact punching through it so cleanly the follow-on fuel fire looks delayed, almost polite. It isn't. But the nearby support vehicles ignite one after another. That's the thing about modern kill chains. Once you've been found, movement is not escape. It is evidence. Minute by minute, the hunt widens. Fixed launch pads are hit. Mobile launch areas are cratered. Drone relay vans disappear in dirt geysers. Storage bunkers lose doors, then roofs, then purpose. Iranian air defense crews try to respond, but they are fighting through jamming, through decoys, through anti-radiation threats. and through the shock of seeing previously concealed positions struck in sequence. They believed they had fired a punishing first blow. Instead, they handed the other side a target package. 425, carrier aircraft still in the air make contact. A pair of FA-18S diverted from combat air patrol. I dropped precision weapons on a coastal guidance site feeding maritime tracking data. One release, two impacts, screen gone. Nearby, an F-35C uses its sensors to identify an emission source the Tomahawks missed, passing the data onward for a follow-up shot from an escort ship. This is why integration matters. Not because it sounds impressive in a briefing, because in the middle of combat, the ability to connect one sensor to one shooter faster than the enemy can relocate decides who survives the next 10 minutes. And the next 10 minutes are merciless. Ammunition storage near the coast cooks off in secondary detonations that roll for nearly a full minute. Fast attack craft at a naval pier are shredded before they can sortie. A command building with redundant antennas loses all of them in one cut. Like branches stripped from a tree by invisible blades. Inland roads clog with vehicles trying to flee presumed target zones, but flight from a modern surveillance grid is not movement. It is a trail, predator and prey. That language is no longer metaphor now. Back aboard Abraham Lincoln, the fires are still burning. Casualties are still mounting. The ship's crew is still fighting for friends trapped under twisted metal. That's the emotional center of this story. Revenge is not abstract when you have names, faces, and missing shipmates. Sailors work hose lines with trembling hands because anger doesn't replace procedure. It sharpens it. Somewhere below the deck, a corpsman is kneeling beside a wounded deckhand who was directing aircraft 9 minutes earlier. Somewhere above, black smoke keeps climbing. Lying that smoke is what launched the counterstrike more than any order ever could. 434. Iranian commanders attempt dispersion. Too late. The command chain is fractured. Coastal sensors are blind or intermittent. Mobile launch crews lose uplinks. Some surviving units go silent, others transmit in panic and are geolocated. Follow-on strikes hit fuel points, reloading areas, and suspected missile assembly storage. Not every target is destroyed. Real war never grants total neatness. But enough are erased, enough networks severed, enough production and launch capacity broken that the attack force stops existing as a coordinated system. What remains is scattered hardware, and men trying to understand why success lasted less than a commercial break. Now step back and look at the ratio. Iran launched 28 ballistic missiles in a surprise maritime strike. Most were destroyed. A few got through, and those few caused brutal damage. But within minutes, the launch architecture that enabled the attack began to collapse under cruise missiles, airborne sensors, electronic warfare, and precision strikes. This is the central lesson of modern high-end conflict. Penetration does not equal victory. A tactical success can become strategic suicide if the enemy's response network is faster, broader, and better connected than your opening blow. By 4:49, 42 minutes after the first launch detection, the combat picture stabilizes. Final tally: 28 Al-Qadr missiles launched, 25 destroyed before impact, 2 direct hits on USS Abraham Lincoln, 1 catastrophic near miss, flight operations temporarily crippled, and fires contained but not fully out. In this fictional scenario, 173 Americans are killed or mortally wounded, more than 260 injured, and the carrier's forward deck and island suffer severe damage. On the other side, 11 launchers destroyed or abandoned, 4 radar and guidance sites knocked out, 3 command nodes wrecked, 2 missile storage facilities burning, multiple drone control assets erased. Strategic outcome? The carrier is mauled. The strike fails anyway. That's the part people miss. You can hurt a carrier. Absolutely. Any serious military professional will tell you that. Enough speed, enough mass, enough precision, and steel burns like anything else. But crippling a U.S. carrier strike group without inviting an immediate, coordinated, theater-wide response is a fantasy. The ship is not the system. It is one node in it. And when you hit that node, the rest of the web tightens. So what does this fictional scenario reveal? First, narrow seas punish everyone. The Strait of Hormuz compresses time, space, and decision-making until mistakes become casualties in seconds. Second, ballistic missiles remain terrifying weapons even against advanced fleets, especially when mixed with decoys, drones, and electronic clutter. Third, Information dominance decides what happens after the first explosion. While Iran believed it had landed a decisive strike, the United States was already geolocating launchers, assigning targets, and preparing a response before the smoke finished rising. Most of all, it shows that modern naval warfare is no longer ship against ship. It is network against network, clock against clock, crew endurance against algorithmic speed. And in that kind of fight, the side that survives the opening shock and restores coherence first becomes the hunter. Could this really happen? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for weekly scenarios like this.